That's great. That's great.
How's it going?
Good.
Thank you so much for being a part of the show. We're pretty laid back here. I don't have some huge introduction, but I imagine that most people who are tuning in already know who you are. But if people don't, this is the amazing Wendee Lee. I'm going to do my best not to freak out because I'm a huge fan. But if you guys don't know, this is really the voice of a lot of people's childhood and adulthood. So she's been everywhere. So I'm just beyond stoked to actually have this happen and be able to touch base. How are you? How are things going?
Great. Great. We're still dealing with a post-production world under COVID. So it's tricky, but I did get to go into a live recording session this morning, and that was very exciting. We're still isolating and only doing one person at a time in studio, if you're allowed to go into studio, but mostly recording from the confines of my home closet. And we're remotely primarily. I just finished directing 2 different series, and every single line of dialogue came straight from my office. Of course, the actors were remote from their home studios as well.
I've got some questions about some home recording, but that makes me want to ask, can you remember how long it's actually been since you've been at a studio?
Today, I got to go.
I mean, before today, like how long has your hiatus been? Because some of the industry have completely closed down, while some were slow going, others were very, very quick to the gun. So I was just curious, how long have you been landlocked at your house doing work, you know?
Yeah, my longest period was from St. Patrick's Day 2020. That was my last day of work until I think May was the first job I had where I was required to go in person. And that I was very uncomfortable about it initially. The union is protecting us. The Screen Actors Guild union has been very careful to set out guidelines and recommendations as to how people will get back to work. And they have been allowing throughout that year, there were windows where people were allowed to come in one person a day per booth, and then it had to be sanitized. They had to use UV lights in the air filtration system. They had to use a filter inside the booth. They had to have disposable covers for your headphones, but most of us know better, and we're bringing our own headphones to work. Touchless, everything. Every aspect of it is completely touchless. The very first job I did, okay, that was a game. That was a while ago. That was before May. So that must have been, maybe it was about a year. It was probably March 2021. I happened to get was it a game? Or it might have been something for Netflix. And they required that you go in studio. And I was terrified. At that point, we were very much in the original lockdown. So what they did is the studio owner greeted me at the door with the studio door open. He was wearing a mask. I went straight in. I never touched anything. And I went right into my booth. He adjusted the mic. He walked outside. He pointed to the back door and said, "Do you see this handle? I'm going to leave it locked. When you are done today, you're going to literally be the only person in this building. No engineer, nobody. It was just a remote room. And when you leave today, pull that door shut because you'll be locking the studio as you go." And that's a huge responsibility, especially when it's a new studio. So I was honored that they trusted me, and I was in a beautiful brand new room with a gorgeous recording bay, and no soul alive was in that building. And that was like a 5-hour recording. So as I got going, I felt very well taken care of. And I felt super safe and completely isolated. When they said I was the only person in the building, I thought they meant in studios. I thought there'd be office people. But when I would take breaks and walk down the hall, every single room was empty. So anyway, long story, but it was traumatic getting back into the studio, just knowing that you would be safe. And a lot of people now are at a point where they've been recording at home so much, they're overwhelmed by the responsibility of being in charge of those tracks and delivering the tracks and being an engineer on some levels. We work with an engineer remotely, but we're still recording backup tracks that are being used as source material. So there's a lot of responsibility from doing it all by yourself at home. And many actors have asked to come back in on the last two shows I was doing. The last show I just did was Vivi Fluorite Eye Song. And all of our leads wanted to come in, and we let them come in for a little while, and then the COVID rules changed. So then they had to go back to recording from home. Oh, and there's also, I have this issue too. In the afternoons, I can't use AC because you can hear air conditioning close to my booth. So you're just baking at home. So many people wanted to get back to the studio so they weren't so hot.
That's awesome to hear that the studio is being as professional as possible. You raised some interesting points, though. I should reference the latter probably first, which is voice actors, especially somebody like yourself, is seasoned. You've worked in so many different fields, but not every voice actor has. And when you're at home and you have to start to adopt the world of the engineer, dare I even say the world of the producer, and start to dive into a little bit deeper, I could see how that could be a whole new bag of tricks for people, and just so many different, how do I say it, curveballs. Like you said, the air conditioner at home, these little, like, I mean, depending on what kind of microphone you use, which we'll get into that. I mean, you can run into all kinds of problems. But I am interested, because the protocol was so top notch at the studio. As a performer myself, and speaking to a few studios that I've worked with, I've heard a bunch of different approaches for the microphone itself. What did they do on your end to be able to keep that clean? Was there an extra pop filter, or like two windscreens in front of it, or anything like that?
Are you talking about in studio or the home recording?
Um, I'm talking in relation to the story that you just told when you went in there and you were the only person in the studio. I'm curious
Yes,
because the
yes.
microphone is such a breathing ground for bacteria. I'm curious how they
Right.
approach that. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
the cleanliness of it. Oh, I
Mm-hmm.
see. It's funny because today's the only day I had any engineer tell me that they change out the microphone after each actor. So that had not been very much of a concern of mine, especially since there's the pop filter. So you've got, like, you'd have a much better mic. This is just my directing mic. But proximity's about here. Your pop screen kind of goes right in between, and you're never in a position where you're putting your mouth anywhere near it. So we usually do the hang 10 thing from the pop screen or from the mic, and you don't, that's sort of a good distance, about 7 inches. So that's been fine. The protocols have all come from Screen Actors Guild, as I said. They've been saying the rooms had to be ventilated, the equipment had to be sanitized, they had to provide alcohol swabs for the headphones, and or these cute little donut shower cap little condoms they've been putting on the
For the
headphones.
ears. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, which are fantastic. And there was a run on those. They sold out at one point during the heart of the first year of pandemic. But really, most of us have just been bringing in our own headphones. That's really the best policy.
Gotcha. That's awesome that they're able to switch out the mics every single time, even though there is a distance. Just to
Right.
know that you're like got something fresh, don't have to worry about it. That's
Yeah.
nice. You are so seasoned at this. I would imagine that you could probably do voice acting while there's a bomb going off in the next room, and you're still just laser focused. But I'm curious, did you, maybe the word is psychologically, but when you were alone there, did you find that that level of isolation got you, did it help you get into the character even more than you usually would? Or are you just oblivious? Because, some people in there, if they got somebody behind the glass or something, they got somebody giving notes, opposed to no one in there. And you just free reign for a couple hours? Sounds
I
like a
still
lot of
had
fun.
my team. My team was all remote in my ears.
Ah, okay.
So we were all seeing the same images at the same time. They were in remote locations, which is so interesting because engineers are almost always in the studio and everybody else is remote. But that engineer was not in the studio. So I don't know. It was really in the beginning, kind of the first 6 months under COVID. And we were terrified. Things were really scary at that point. And um, I'm assuming that the studio didn't feel it was safe for the actor and the engineer to be in the same building. That's probably what it came down to.
Gotcha.
But no, I felt a different kind of isolation for sure. Like really getting that Omega Man sense of being the only person there was very, very clear. Whenever I needed to make contact with earthly humans, they, I could reach out to them through the microphone and they would respond. And I think they could see, they also had a camera on me. I couldn't see them, but they could see me, which makes me paranoid a little bit. But once in a while, they would say, "You okay? Do you need a break? Is everything all right?" So they'd probably see me getting a little insecure or something. And they would check in with me all the time. So I think that we tend to do that in post production. We know that the talent is really in an isolation booth and they are unable to hear anything except for what we feed them. So we control everything they hear. So I think because of that, we nurture and take care of the talent and really think of them sort of as the guest. They're the special guest in the whole chain of production. And so I think I certainly know when I'm directing, I'm constantly checking in with my talent. Do you need water? How's your voice? So be sure to relax your palate. You just did a bunch of screaming. Take a moment. Why don't you have a seat while we work on some editing? Open your door. You need some room, some air in your room. Go for it. We're going to be editing for a moment. Things like that. I just really try to stay in touch with the talent because normally what I could take from a glance, I'm having to do completely auditorially.
From every behind the scene video I've ever seen your team be a part of, no matter what show or project that is working on, it doesn't surprise me that when you're throwing a curveball like this, you guys are on top of it and working really well. That is really pro, and that's really great. You can, even if you're not all in the same room, you can definitely get some work done with that type of workflow setup. No
Yeah.
doubt.
The session I just did, the director was in Canada. The producers were in downtown LA, and then someone else was outside of LA, and I was in Koreatown. So I mean, we were all in different. And now, and I'm not sure why, but the technical flow of Zoom and Source Connect and all the different software and platforms that we use are running much smoother. Knock wood. We usually don't want them to hear us say that because that's when they act up. But it's all seems to be streamlining much more now than it did in those early 4 or 5 months when we were first starting out. Almost every other take, I would lose half of the audio. I couldn't hear what was going on. We'd have to wait for it to sync up. There's a lot of problems with it. So the mother of necessity, the of invention, just the sheer need to keep production rolling and all the finances, the financial investments, how much it costs to run a session per hour times everybody involved, the deadlines we were facing, it created an atmosphere where people got really inventive. And within just 2 or 3 weeks, we were recording again. Things were happening. It was rough, and we found certain platforms worked better than others. But I mean, I've produced maybe the most content I ever have, certainly from home, definitely. But I was able to do more work because I didn't have to plan drive time. That must be what it was. So I was able to put sessions almost back to back with like 15 minutes, a half hour in between them and just fill the days.
That's a luxury that's in your job that is pretty great. And if you can continue to do that, it's gonna save a lot. You know what I mean? I've got a bunch of random questions, some from the internet, some from myself. Some people have questions in regards to your background, and then we got a whole bunch of a whole bunch of Outlaw Star stuff at the end. I can't speak today, but let's jump into it. The first thing on here is when people think of some of the biggest animes ever created, they think of you. Your voice is plastered all over the world of anime. For over 20 years now, you have had your hand in so many memorable projects. Looking back on all of this work, how does it feel to be one, or if not, the biggest voice actors in the genre?
Oh, um, that's hugely overstating what I've done, but I really appreciate that. That's very kind of you. Super generous. Honestly, I usually don't tell people what I do because it is so unknown. Is the truth. I mean, I'm actually the trajectory that I set out for my career was to be an on-camera film star, you know. So, and it wasn't about the stardom; it was about the opportunity to create new characters, which has always been my love and my great goal is original content and creating characters. So, of course, the universe threw me in a situation where I'm recreating characters that have already been created from Japan in most cases. But I found a way to sort of put my mark on that and try to honor everything that exists already in the original production and then perhaps enhance it a little in my native language. And and I've always thought of post production as certainly dubbing, redoing audio for finished said production, post production ADR work. The directions to get there to me have always been down a very dark hall, round the corner, and when you find the last turn, go all the way to the end of it. At the end of that cul-de-sac is what I do. So I'm not really a well-known actor by any means, except for our genre for the most part. Although it's interesting because when I was a young girl, my mom got a psychic reading, and my mother was very intuitive naturally and had a lot of native, natural shamanistic ways about the way she was raised as Native American, mostly Native American. Um, and she had this reading, and this woman said, oh, my mom said, I'd love for you to read my daughter's palm. And I was like, oh, mom, I was poo pooing it. And she took a look at my palm and she looked at me with this penetrating look and she said, my dear, your palm is too young to read, but I can tell you right now that your name will be a house word. And I just thought, well, I want to be an actor, so that could be amazing. And, you know, I just thought, it was enough, it left enough of an impression on me that I've remembered it to this day, and my mom and I used to laugh about it, but she completely believed that that would be the case and the trajectory for my life. But I would say careful what you wish for, because it is sort of what I wished for, but I wasn't really very specific. So I find myself much more behind the scenes, even though I'm very much an on-camera actor, and I come from theater and dance and singing, and I love entertainment in all genres. But to have any kind of material that may outlive my time on the planet is a huge honor. So to be a part of anything as great as Cowboy Bebop or Akira or Outlaw Star or Bleach or any of the great titles I've been a part of, to think that that work will live on and can be reintroduced to subsequent generations down the road is just a huge honor. It's so awesome. It's like, do something with your life. I heard a beautiful quote, something about the goal isn't just to live a great life, it's to create something that's great that lives on. And I just thought, wow, if we could all be so lucky.
Yeah, no, I hear you. ADR might be down the dark hallway, but it's one of the most important steps that's there. And you're extremely modest because though you might not, you know, your IMDb page might show more behind the scenes work opposed to on air talent, but it is staggering. And I think most people in the genre, even outside of the genre, because you've worked on a lot of different projects, I think very much know your name. And if they don't know your name, whether they know it or not, they know your voice. And that's great that you can look back and see that impact and know that those things have some longevity to it because, well, I mean, you've already seen it. You've been in you've done this career for quite some time, so you've seen different generations, you know, fall onto some of these things. So you definitely are doing it, and it's working. So that's really exciting. You were speaking about your background of dancing. I got a question here that says, I heard you were a dance teacher for a number of years, and in 2018 you did an interview where you mentioned that you started dancing again. Are you still doing dance? I know the world is, you know, kind of shut down right now, but did you still do that? Are you still teaching, or were you still teaching until, you know, we all kind of took a little break there?
No, actually, I stopped teaching when I had my own little dance company, a little troupe of dancers, kind of from seventh grade through college age girls, and we were called Planet Dancers. And when I met my husband, I was still very involved with teaching and running after school programs and working with planet dancers and securing performance venues for them. And kind of, I found I was suddenly not only directing a dance troupe, but I was costuming it, choreographing it, getting photography for it. And I was also becoming a booking agent. And it was just pulling me in so many different directions that all I was really able to do was my voiceover career, and it kind of wiped out all of the other on camera or on stage acting that I had going on. And my husband saw me scrambling through those years, trying to kind of meet all those obligations. And he said, this talk with me and said, I think you should really cultivate this voiceover career of yours, and maybe let some of these other things go. And I was having a lot of trouble with the dynamics between students and parents. Any dance teachers know dealing with the students is fantastic. It can be very difficult dealing with parents.
Yeah.
Parents that are very involved in wanting their kids to have solos and you name it. So, and I thought I ran a very democratic organization where everybody really got a fair shot at everything that we did. And we auditioned for solos and, made the best work get the part. But after he saw the strife I was going through, sort of balancing all of that, and it all kind of coming to a peak. All those avenues were growing and they were all doing well, but it was really hard for me to fracture myself in all those directions and meet all those demands and still have healthy amounts of downtime and balance in my life, which has always been my goal. And so he said, I really think you should jump into this voiceover thing full time. And at the time, I remember thinking, if I get just one more show a week, then I'd be able to let go of two of the classes I'm teaching. And if I get two more shows a week, and I was trying to figure out how to make that happen. But honestly, I think a lot of it was actualizing it and sending out my intention to the universe. Because when I made that transition, my voiceover career blew up. And it was very apparent that that's where I needed to be. And I think that's a huge task or challenge in everybody's lives is to identify those goal signs in your career, those paths in your life that are flowing, where things are working, and take that path of least resistance and grow it. And I found myself in that position where I had to say, this is causing too much havoc and this is working. Let's go with the flow. Where is destiny taking me?
Are you a Pressfield fan? You just say the path of least resistance, so that reminds me very much of Pressfield's notable, what is it, The Art of War, The War of Art, or one of the two? You know what I'm talking about?
I only have heard those terms. No, I am not per se a fan, but I approach work and life very spiritually. I constantly try to keep my head on straight as far as not getting too into ego and not falling into depression when things are low. But again, it's riding and surfing the middle of balance where you really have the male and female energies balanced and you are in flow. I mean, that's kind of the best way I can say it, that you are not forcing something that is just not meant in your path.
Yeah.
And I think we've all encountered that, with that crush, that person, that class, that job that you just won't let it go because you want it so bad. But this like squeezing tight is not the way to keep something. It's all about opening your hand to destiny and possibilities and really your highest calling is the thing that I'm always in search of.
Well, like you said, putting it out into the universe is a great thing, and you'll get a lot back if you do that and really open your ears to it. Because rarely what we want and what we need are rarely two of the same things. But if you can be honest with yourself, and those paths will open up. And even though it's closing a door, like you said, it's opening up another one in so many different ways that it almost seems silly you might have not done it earlier. You know.
I really, really like that analogy. It's very hard to identify it in the moment, and sometimes it's very painful. But being present in the moment to in those difficult times to the magic that happens around you and identifying it can be the very thing that carries you to true happiness and fulfillment and the right place that you want to be in your career. I mean, let's consider the truth that people change careers many, many times in in our culture. And I heard that the average was up to like 6 or 7 different careers most people have. So when things are difficult and opportunity seems diminished, there's certainly other avenues to explore. This is very much on my mind because I'm going into some classes I'm going to be teaching about mental health, wellness, and voiceover, and how to approach those things through a group called the HALP group, HALP. And they're a new group to me, but I'm honored that they tapped me to sort of address some of these mental health issues, wellness issues. I'm really at a place in life where I'd like to share those with other people.
You know, I think your mindset or ideology, whatever you want to call it, is actually rather refreshing. I suffer from the clinical diagnosis of extreme depression, so I can empathize greatly with what you're talking about. No doubt about that at all. Um, and you're right. People do change their careers a lot, but if you can release that tension, as you say, and go with the flow, there's definitely a lot to get from that. No doubt about that. You mentioned that you did choreography work for music videos in your past. I don't know if you're able to say or not, but what bands did you work with, or what music videos have you worked on? Is there anything online that we can look up and we can credit, you put the moves down on this video?
Yeah, yeah. I wonder. I worked with these guys, Dorian Gray, and I like help them set up their whole industry launch party, and we sort of did a whole staging for their band. And I worked on a couple of their videos, and I would also go to their shows once in a while and just kind of give them staging pointers. It's funny because most of the bands I worked with, they kind of, I think they didn't like the idea that the record label was bringing in a choreographer. But
Mm-hmm.
what I tried to do is let them know, certainly the way I felt as a singer, stage performer, is that I'm only there to help them work with what they already know and do. So just to sort of take the best pieces of what they already had going on and sort of bring them together, like maybe in a unison movement, or rotate the positions that they're standing in, things like that. Just little staging techniques, because I was a theater director for a long time, and stage pictures kind of was my thing as far as I'm a visual artist as far as choreography goes. And so I would often be looking at stage shapes and pictures. And so that was sort of the stuff I would help them with. But there were a lot of other, oh my gosh, what was his name? Stiley's his last name. I'm forgetting his first name. There were a good half a dozen bands that I worked with, and I don't know if any of those videos live on. But it was something I fell into with all of my music connections, because I really came from the music side of the industry, and that's how I got into post production. My dear friend Chris Sampson was a live sound engineer for major bands, Beach Boys, Frank Zappa, Supertramp, Jethro Tull, Herbie Hancock, tons of big acts. And when he was in between world tours, he would work at a little studio in Hollywood called Intersound. And Intersound is where I got to come in and audit a session, and I was given a chance to audition for a show. I thought I was just going to be auditing, but they said, "Hey, Chris, your friend is here. Would she like? She's an actress. Would she like to audition?" And I just like flew into the studio, thinking, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" But sure, yeah, I'll try it. Very cool. And what I found out later, several weeks later, maybe even months later, is that I was cast in Robotech from that audition. And that was my very first studio experience in an ADR setting. And I was thrilled because I was already kind of a studio junkie as a singer. And I spent a lot of time in the business in recording studios. And that's how I jumped in. So I'm so grateful that my music background is really what led to my voiceover career.
I need to get a pen because I keep not spacing out, but you're mentioning a few things, and I want to be able to jump back to them, but it's fine. Here,
Well,
I'll use this marker instead.
I did ask your question about dance though, and I'm
Oh
going
no,
to.
absolutely.
I'm so happy to be dancing again. Yeah, I got away from performing, thinking that I didn't fit the mold as a dancer. I was no longer a teenager or a 20-something-year-old, 100-pound waif, and not that I ever was, but a lot of what drove me out of dance was the nasty competition that goes on between professional dancers in many settings. And what happened is I found a studio that calls itself a non-competitive dance studio, where dancers of all shapes and sizes and age can come together and dance in a positive setting where they support each other. And when
Nice.
I found that, it just opened the world of dance to me again. And I was taking a lot of hip hop and jazz and yoga booty body and Pilates and a little bit of Zumba and some Latin stuff. I was taking hula, which I love dearly, from a beautiful Hawaiian girl from Maui who's not teaching any longer in that studio, but I'm always open to that. But for me, it's world dance that really turns me on. So I did a lot of Bollywood dance and a little bit of Balinese dance, and just kind of anything like that, just to keep moving and keep my spirits up. And the last big kernel to attack or to get my head around was ballet. And that's really my roots of dance. And so I am officially back in ballet class on a regular basis, and I joined a little dance company, and it's amateur, totally amateur, but I just filmed a segment for my performance yesterday.
Wow.
So I'm very inspired that you asked me about that. And
Wow.
yeah.
Well,
So I'm not ready to announce where I'm performing, but once that happens, when I feel confident about it, I will. I still need to kind of build my confidence
Gotcha.
and just do it for me at this point. But yeah, that's awesome.
Well, watching that interview from 2018 and watching you speak about your background in dance and how much you loved it, but also speaking about how you were taking a break and the impact of that, and then hearing how excited you are to jump back into it is really awesome, because it was very apparent that this was a huge piece of you. So that's very delightful. When you speak about the inner politics with dancers, that is very interesting. And in many industries, and I've spoken to quite a few people in and out of your industry on this show, it's funny because those politics are always there, but the higher you get in this game, it's very, very clear that if you're an asshole, it's not going to work out at all. And
Mm-hmm.
it's funny to hear that you come from the theater background and you embody that teamwork even when you were transitioning to working with the bands and coming up with their idea, opposed to a lot of choreographers who will come in and say, here's your moves, which is totally different. And then hearing how you approach working in ADR, which is almost the exact same way, very democratic, very open, everyone's working together. That is a luxury that I only wish I could apply for, because there's so many businesses and just parts of this industry that could really learn from that type of mentality. So when I asked earlier if you've read Pressfield, it speaks about having a good mind on your shoulders and that artistic place that you need to be able to really knock it out of the park. And it's like you're speaking that language right off the bat. So kudos to you for kicking butt so much. I deal with depression. I've got a whole bunch of problems myself. I'm an independent musician, and this is kind of leading up to what I'm doing in the studio. It's something I've done with COVID on the side. But, what you were speaking before about your ideology, the name of my show is called Tell Me Something Great. And that's just, your mentality on this is very great. And I knew having you on here would be good because you work in a way that some people don't even think is possible. They see things in this industry and they see a boss, a chairman looking down, and it's not always like that. And you always have this very warm, welcoming demeanor to yourself, but in your teams, they embody that too. And that is really great, and something that I think anyone who sees your work sees it. They hear the comfortability in the characters. When they see behind the scenes, they see how thrilled you guys are, and they know you're not just putting on a front. Like, this is a genuine love you have, and that is just, it's really great. I just wanted to mention that.
It's true, but when you're dealing with creative people, your chances are higher, I think, of achieving um, that harmonious kind of vibe. It is so much a frequency that if you've got an environment that's supportive and giving and caring, you're much more likely as an artist to take risks and come up with those amazing kernels that we wouldn't otherwise um, even have as an option in our takes. I just, the more you trust your room and the more you're making people laugh or moving them to tears or giving them chills, the more you're encouraged to do more of that. So it comes out of the cooperative too.
Yeah, it's this level of comfortability that they can get to, and fear starts to diminish, and that's when the act of role playing and make believe can really come out without any kind of judgment or biased
That's the key.
action, and that right there is, even if the whole day doesn't work out, sound issues, whatever, like, but that's the mentality. That's where you can get stuff done and really have some fun stuff uh,
Totally.
transpire. You know what I mean?
It's so true. It's so true. And I think a lot of the reason that I wanted to get into directing and being a dance teacher and being a choreographer and staging is because I did work with people that really had that sort of dictator attitude. And I used to just see how it would shut people down and turn off their light and just make people conform. And it's just, I am so deeply a part of the American democratic fabric as far as really putting the egos aside and joining together as equals, that it would hurt me. It would hurt my soul to see that happening to people. And I just used to think, if I was in that position, I would lift them up. I would never shred somebody down like that. And I know that there's been times I've been harsh on people. I mean, as the words just came out of my mouth, I had to check myself. And I've had to go back and think and approach people and go, hey, I know yesterday's session was rough and I hope you're okay. I hope I wasn't too hard on you, you know, because a lot of what I think uh, could come close to being difficult in working with me is that I'm expecting everyone to deliver their very highest goods. And so that's a high expectation, but I'm very patient and willing in helping you to get there. If there's anything I can do to make that journey happen in an organic way, fill you in on the story, tell you what's going on with the other characters, whatever we can do, it's a cooperative, and I'll do that. But I know that people often feel worked out after working with me because I just know exactly what I'm looking for. Very seldom am I up in the air. Let's just see what you do. Have fun with it. I'm very crystal clear about what we're going for, and I don't want to waste people's time. So I try to reduce the amount of takes we get and convey the information with notes so people can create it themselves rather than I act the line out and ask them to do my version of it. I want their version of that.
You are an absolute pro, and I think if anyone takes that as harsh, I don't think they've had enough time in this industry, because that's refreshing. And I think
Oh,
people would love to work with somebody who is that direct and can be that diligent with pre-production to get the notes across, so you're not wasting time. You're trimming fat. Like, this is all the response of somebody who's extremely seasoned in their career, and it just makes for the best workflow. And I mean, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And you clearly have a workflow that's working good. Our mutual friend Steve, I remember he was saying there were some long days, but it makes for the best art, and you're pushing these people to really try to do something great with it and great with their voice. And obviously the bosses aren't upset; they're happy. So I think you're doing great. That's good.
I love that. Yeah, it's cute. When Steve gets frustrated with my direction, he'll just be very quiet and he'll go, okay, and say, okay, really loud. And then he'll do it and it's perfect. He's like, oh, that's what you wanted? Huh. Okay.
Though you guys, are equals in many ways, there are many different things that you're doing that are on a way different level than just some of the stuff that Steve does. And that's not a slight or an
Oh,
insult by
no.
any means. When I spoke to
Very
Steve, I
nice.
I asked him a few questions, and he's like, "You have to talk to Wendee. Wendee is the person who would be doing that type of work. She is the person who's thinking like you are." He's like, I'd run in and say my lines. I'd get
Right.
into the character,
Right.
but I'm more of a voice actor while she is heading up ADR. And it's a much different world. It's a much different, your fingers are in the pie. You know what I mean? You are an essential role. And I'm jumping the gun because I'm so excited here. But earlier you said, I wanted to. You said it was funny because you're working on characters that are already developed. But in regards to like Outlaw Star, and we'll get to this, there are creative choices that you took that actually made those characters much more original. So you are bringing things to the table that are definitely different from what they were originally done. And some people, can take that for what it's worth. Some people like dubs, some people like subs. It is what it is. But I think the mass majority of people really like what you bring to the table because you understand it. I mean, you've been in it for so long. I think you, no pun intended, you speak the language, but maybe. I actually have that on here. Can you speak any other languages?
You would think, oh gosh, I wish some of this had sunken in. No. And it's ironic that you say that because I had a Korean clients that I was working with, CJ Entertainment, for a while. I did several of their dubbed feature films. And I was working with a great producer there, a lady that we just got along great. And she wanted me to come and see one of their premieres in one of their big movie theaters. They actually have 4D movie theaters. They're supposed to be experiential.
They splash water on you, like
Yeah,
that real?
and I've never been, and I was going to, but shut down. But we'll get there. So we went to a premiere, and she grabs me from a reception and says, "Oh, Wendee, I want you to meet our CEO." I was like, "Oh God, okay." And so she turns around, and just speaks in Korean, and then says in English, and she understands Korean perfectly. And I said, no, no. And he says, oh, and he starts speaking to me in Korean. I'm like, no, no, no. With a translation, I understand it. And really what they're talking about is, and I can get this out of any language, with a translation, not without a translation, but with a translation, the essence of the emotion of what's going on is crystal clear to me in any language I've ever worked with. And that can become confused with actually understanding the foreign words, which I don't. But I have picked up a number of Japanese words here and there, and the few that I know always help. Like every once in a while, I'll hear "ima" now, and it's interesting because sometimes it won't be in the translation itself, but I know it's urgent. It's being said now. You pick out little words,
Yeah.
"hana," flower, nose. They both mean the same thing. Just funny little sayings, shogunai, such as life, little things. But I do wish that I was just saying to my cast when we were wrapping up Vivi, if we had just learned 2 words for every volume, we would be up to 26 words now.
Right.
Yeah. But more than anything, it's understanding the human condition, the emotion of what's being said. And that I feel like I am a technician at. I feel that, I often have to tell my husband whenever we have any heated words that I am a professional communicator. And that's what I have down to a T. And I communicate the human condition with every performance and every line of dialogue I work on every day. So I take great pride in that. Most people only get one lifetime per lifetime, but I've played over 500 different characters in one lifetime. And that's a real honor. And it's also a burden. You want to do it well and do it with honor and, leave really good work that people are pleased with.
I actually have a comment here. It's not a question, but it's funny that you're just recalling these things like it's nothing. It says your memory and ability to recall characters from over a decade plus ago is a real testament to how well you've honed your craft. Signed, a fan with a horrible memory.
Oh, I feel like you, fan. I feel like my memory fails me I am so fallible. I'm so human. I make all kinds of little mistakes. I'm, the first to admit it and the first to apologize. It's funny because we were talking about kind of the psychology of apologizing, how it can be very difficult for some people. And for women, typically we are raised in our culture to be pleasers and to make people happy and to be good little girls and to put often our emotions aside for the betterment of the room or your family or the relationship or whatever it is. So to think in terms of, yeah, recall the best you can, but if it's not accurate, my bad, I'm doing the best I can, you know. um, I don't think I do remember my characters that well. I think I remember moments pretty well, and with a little bit of jogging the memory, a lot comes back. That I'll take credit for. Yeah, I can. When I know the character we're talking about, a lot can come back. Definitely.
Well, luckily, I mean, some voice actors do. I mean, they'll get 15 jobs in one day and they'll be working in LA for a few years and it's just one job after another. Luckily, some of the projects you've worked on have had just legs for forever. So that always helps too, that that they're popping back up. That's got to help the memory. Who presented you with the award for being the most dubbed English content in North America? And do you still hold that title to today?
I think I do because somebody said it's up to 550, but I haven't researched it. I've never counted. And I know that not all my credits have been collected because I have never posted a single credit I've ever done. I almost all of my directing credits do not end up on IMDb. It doesn't really look like I have much of a directing credit there, which is well, career there, which is so funny because I've been directing solid for the last 20 years, if not the last 27 years, but mostly the last 20 years. When I made that transition to full-time voiceover, I took a deep dive there. Um, how do I know? Was it behind the voiceover actors, behind the scenes, them and somebody else? I think IMDb sent me a notice and somebody else mentioned it, but this was a really good point. This came out in an interview recently. They said, but it's so much more than 550 credits because in those 550 shows, I probably did a handful of incidentals of additional voices in those shows.
Hmm.
That figure could probably be doubled, if not quadrupled, easily. But do we count the incidental characters? Maybe we don't. I don't know.
Well, that's also to factor in how many jobs just might have not fallen through too. You know what I mean? You're still getting your paycheck doing your work. So I mean, even if it's not listed on IMDb and then you're not on top of it, putting every single job on there, there's got to be so many that fall through the cracks.
There's a ton. And I know that there's several girls from Funimation that are quick on my heels. I think Monica Rial might break my record soon, and I'm up for it. I'm like at the Olympics. I cheer on the competition. Go, go, go.
Well, that's
I just
good.
loved how the Olympics was like that this time. I'm kind of an Olympics junkie. I'm not into sports at all, but I adore everything about the Olympics. And to see how people came together and cheered on the second place person and the third, the gold medal winner turns around and is like cheering. It's the best in us, and I just love that so much. It's truly the peace games, and that really, since I watched closing ceremonies last night, that was very nostalgic.
Yeah, it's nice to see that. We live in a world where we don't see that often, so when we do see it, it's a beautiful thing to say the least.
Oh, beautiful. We really can come together, and that's a perfect example of it.
I know that you use Twitter probably more than Facebook and some of the other social media sites out there, but somebody asked, why does your website not work? Is it that you don't use a website anymore? You just,
I don't want it.
yeah.
I've had a problem with web developers, with webmasters. And the last situation was they let my name fall out of I've been paying to hold on to my name for years. And my webmaster let it slide and somebody bought it. So when they took away wendeelee.com, I just lost all interest.
Makes total sense. I was after
Nope.
justinyates.com for about 7.5 years until they finally let it go. But yeah, trust me, I know it can be a pain.
It was more work than it was worth. It was a lot of maintenance. I never had it up to speed the way I wanted it. My career took off, and I just felt like it's all about promotion, and I'm not huge on a ton of self promotion. I want to interact with the fans, which is a huge luxury.
Wendee Lee, what does success mean to you?
Oh, that's so interesting. I could say it's unattainable. um, I think it is doing your best work, having it acknowledged, um, feeling satisfied with that, and knowing that more will come. I think there's this elusiveness to success that you feel like you have it at times and other times you don't. Um, I confess that I still very much feel like I did in the beginning of my career, where I audition for the majority of my work and I put myself out there and I've got to work all day and meet all of my commitments. And at the end of the day, you open up your emails and you almost don't want a ton of auditions because it means recording until 1 in the morning and doing all your editing and polishing all of the tracks and getting them in by the deadlines. And under remote recording, it's just a tremendous amount of solo work and keeping self motivated and meeting your deadlines. And I think most artists wrestle with what success is, honestly. I think there's moments where you feel really successful, and there are moments where you feel like you're never going to work again. And I still have those days. At this point in my career, it's so funny because all my friends are programmed. They all know when they start saying, "How are you doing?" It's been okay. All right. What's happening with work? They know right away. Well, it's been a little slow. I don't know. I just finished my last show. I really don't know if I'll ever work again. And that's when, cue the chorus, they all start laughing at me. Where they're like, you say this about 2 or 3 times every year, and you always do. When are you going to have the confidence in yourself that we have in you? So, success, it's a hard one. I think I wrestle with that. I feel really proud of the technical aspect of my work that I have perfected and that I have worked so hard on and feel so confident about. I feel like if I were to be super honest, it's hard to be this transparent, but it probably is good for people to hear this, that I feel sort of rejected by the world of animation proper. I don't really feel accepted by the big studios or the bigger titles, even though I've worked in many wonderful AAA games and very big shows. I got to replace Mrs. Beakley on DuckTales, and I became Mrs. Beakley. It was wonderful until they decided to update the entire series and recast everyone and make it a modern rather than a vintage take on that. I've just had so many brushes with, if that one thing had gone that step further, it would have been enormous and blown my career up. And many of those have been little broken dreams. I had a great series, Megas XLR, for Cartoon Network, and it was amazing. It was with Steve Bloom and I in the leading roles, and the creators of the show, who I adore so much, Jody and Chris, wrote those characters for us. And, we thought we were going to get a third season and a fourth, and it just got shut down, and they can't even replay the original shows because it was a bankruptcy declaration, which means you'd have to bail out the show and pay for all the back paid fines and fees and what have you. And so I've had a number of these close calls with the really big time, and yet I feel like I'm sort of in the minor leagues. So maybe that's where I don't know how I feel about success. But I think it's a great thing to make as your goal to achieve.
It's such an interesting question. I ask everybody it because everyone has their own, level of success, how they judge it and how they gauge it. Um, but the psychology that you have adopted is really interesting because in some ways that hustle and grind is very like entrepreneurial.
Mhm.
or it's and what I can kind of relate to more, that of poverty, of constantly running and constantly working, and the fear of these things and knowing that it will go away. Now I'm curious, why do you think it's stuck? Because I mean, you've worked with some big wigs. I mean, just your work with Sabian over the years. I mean, so many different things should give you that level of confidence. But do you think that the first couple years of that knowledge of how this industry works, you think just stuck, and that hustle just was just a part of you, and you just keep it going to this day? It just is always there because you know how, what's the word, maybe finicky this industry is, or how loose that this industry can be.
Well, I think it's really a survival mechanism. It's about, uh, first of all, we're all freelance actors. Like we have no safety net. That's why I always had teaching and dance and working in the videos and all the other production work that I was doing. I always had a backup for the backup for the backup in case the job fell apart. But I went through a period of life where I was a poor kid. So I know what it's like to go without and to be raised by a single mama working two and three jobs. And we had alcoholism in our family. And that, really damaged like the DNA of our bloodline. And overcoming all of that stuff is really fallen to my generation of my family, my sister and I. And sort of lifting us back up out of the very difficult and dark childhood that I had at times. And so I think that lives on in my psyche. I think that, well, first of all, let me go back to the fact that we as actors have zero job security. Absolutely zero. Even if you have a series, it's short lived. The longest work I've had was directing Bleach for 4 years. That was, we knew the manga went on, and there was a ton of episodes, but even that came to an end. And there's always a sense of you're securing the next thing before the thing you're on now ends, to make sure you have overlapping opportunities, because inevitably you're going to hit a dry spell, and that's where we see the mental health of our colleagues just take a nosedive.
Yeah.
And also, if you define who you are by your work, you are waging two major aspects of your personality on one totally teetering perspective that could be pulled out from under you at any time.
Yeah.
So I've always made sure to broaden the spectrum of my life, that my friends and family are apart from the work that I do. I do have dear work friends, but my husband had to point out when I used to talk about representing my community and speaking on behalf of other actors, I would stick my neck out in negotiations for people that didn't per se do that for me. And it took an objective eye coming from my husband to point out, I wouldn't say you're speaking for your village, for your people. You are representing yourself, because those people around you may not also have your back. And I love them dearly, but they have to think of themselves first. So there's a real survival issue in what we do, that we are not in this business just to have fun. We have found something we love that we turned into a business. Thank God. And I recommend that to everyone. What's the saying? Find something you love and you turn it into work, and you'll never work again. It'll all be, love. But production has high demands and stress, and we work super fast. Everything we do is just a breakneck speed because it's all about keeping costs down. And so being a technician that can do all of that and deliver stuff fast and with quality is all really great, but there's always someone else waiting to take that job or enter that field or audition with you. And honestly, I do in many ways feel forgotten by many of the studios that I've worked for in the past. And it's, this is the plight of a woman in America. There's fewer roles for women, there are fewer opportunities for women. And at the same time, a woman becomes more invisible as she ages. And as soon as the world doesn't see you as beautiful, attractive, whatever, opportunities start to fade with that. And I'm here to say, I'm going to go kicking and screaming into that good night, producing and creating content because I'm not going anywhere. And I plan to not only continue as a voice artist, as a director, as a casting director, as a singer, I plan to dance into that good night. I am made a commitment to myself that I'm gonna be that little old lady in the back of the ballet room, doing bar and putting on my little costume and enjoying the classical music and the art, the high art form of dance in my life. And I'm gonna do the same thing with voiceover. Even after I retire, I plan to still guest on shows.
I can only empathize what it's like to be a woman in the industry. It's something I can't even wrap my head around completely. And it's astonishing to me that the Wendee Lee would be forgotten by some of these studios. And maybe they just need a fresh reminder. But yeah, I mean, I can only imagine the type of hurdles that you've had to deal with throughout your entire career because it's taken some changes, the industry, throughout your career. You know what I mean? So that, I mean, I can't wait for your memoirs because I know you're going to have a lot of different stories as far as that goes. But in regard, hold on,
I would like to add before, please hold your thought, but I would
sure.
like to add that it is getting better. And I do feel like I've added some cracks in that glass ceiling. And I'm really proud of that. And I think the more that we can approach business from a feminist perspective, just without any emotional response to that word, but the definition of equality between the sexes, total equality, same pay, same opportunity, same chances for escalating and climbing your ladder within your field. The more we approach that holistically, the better and closer we will get to true balance between the male and female energies. So I encourage you, all of you, to embrace feminism in your fields, in your individual lives, and to understand what that word means. It's a very simple coexisting of equality between the sexes. That's all.
And it is a sad thing that some of these things that would bring us so much closer are still something that just still tears us apart in many ways. And like I said, I can only empathize with some of these things because I'm not in your shoes. I never will be. And yeah, it's got to be difficult for a number of different reasons, and I feel what you're saying about getting older with your career, for a number of different ways, but being a female, yeah, that's definitely something that a lot of women talk about. They feel forgotten and that they don't hold value because they're getting older or for whatever that may be. And even though I believe that's very much not true, I can see how they can believe that, and I can see how the industry supports that in some ways, and it's horrific. But regardless,
It's our
I
culture. It's not
it is
just our business.
it is no doubt about that. But you know, I think you would do fine on camera or off camera. But though I am very interested to hear you continue to do voices into your later years because your range is all over the place. So as morbid as it may sound, as you get older and the body starts to age in that way, it'll be very interesting to see what goes through your vocal box and how extending to those ranges may be a difficult thing, but might bring out all different types of really interesting characteristics. And you being a person who loves to explore that, I mean, there's some silver lining there that could be really interesting, and that kind of stuff will always be sought after. You know what I mean? You'll always have a place, and they'll want to take that. So I think you're always going to have a home here. And like I said, I think some of these people just need to be reminded of what you do. I don't think they'd forget your name anytime soon.
That is so kind of you, and I do think there's something to that. All the changing phases of the voice are so interesting to
Hmm.
explore as it's happening to you, and it happens gradually. So sometimes you don't even realize you've picked up new voices or you've dropped off others until you hear a reference audio clip, and then you try to emulate it. You're like, oh. I had to pitch that up even more because my natural voice has dropped even more, or vice versa. I'm now able to reach these deeper notes I never could reach before. There's really something to that. And with singing, the voice gets better over the years.
Oh yeah.
That's the thing. It just gets so much. There's just you learn to use it so much better over time.
You know,
And so
it's
I'm interested in that.
what would be also really interesting is in your career, there's so many different reboots and there's so many different remakes, and the likelihood of those things happening is actually pretty great. It would be so interesting to actually see you, later in your career, maybe actually do a voice and actually have the ability to play that character as, they're older as well too, to have that
Oh,
voice matured.
that's
The
cool.
likelihood of that happening could actually be possible and would be so cool for just the character development over time. That's one of those things that you could try to do, but to authentically be like, no, I'm not pretending I have 20 years on my vocal
Yeah,
box. I have 20 years in my
you
vocal box.
do.
This is an
Yeah,
aged character. I'm not making it an aged character. I'm doing the same voice, but it's just time. And
yeah.
that depth has got to be, oh, maybe I'm nerding out too much, but that would be so cool.
That is so cool. But that's the thing I love about audio and voiceover is that people can work to the last trimester of their pregnancy in
Hmm.
audio. And I even had Julie Madalena come in after she gave birth with a little newborn baby.
Oh, wow.
2 weeks later, wait, we're voicing in between coos. Okay, I think she's asleep now.
Wow.
We can go. I mean, women can take a break and go breastfeed. Like our business is so good about accommodating the individual and also being able to work at all points in your life. Of course, anime is youth obsessed. It's all about magical high school people. So we always need those young voices. And that's the lure that keeps drawing in so much excitement about people wanting to get into the business. They want to play those young roles. But as you mature into the deeper roles, often people fall off and do other things and don't continue with this career forever. I mean, they sometimes are satisfied and leave it. So it is interesting to play your voice and see how your instrument changes over the years with time.
Yeah, being a singer myself, I feel that very, very much, and can only, I don't know, it's weird over time because I was a smoker. I sadly
Uh-huh.
still am, but I was a very big smoker for a long time, and I come from more heavier genres of music, so I was constantly blowing out my voice and screaming and doing all kinds of things, modulating my voice in different ways. Now I do like a singer-songwriter thing, and I sing a little bit more, but I also come from the theater, so I'm constantly shaping my voice differently. For a long time, I couldn't breathe through my diaphragm properly and had to go through that whole entire thing. And now it's so weird because I had a back injury. I took some time off. And even with the time off, like you said, the voice is just constantly, it's its own muscle, it's its own thing. I can take time off and I can still tell that it's like, I'm not losing this. Obviously, I got to tune it up a little bit, but the time and the maturity and the fact that it grows more and just it's remarkable. From being a guitar player and then really studying the voice as an instrument, it's I just absolutely fell in love with it. It is really, really cool to say the least.
It is. It is. And I have a neighbor who cornered me the other day and said something about, well, what do you think about AI voices? Aren't they going to put you out of business? I said, well, let's hope not. It's like, I mean, we may see the advancement of AI voice work, but let's hope that audiences still crave the human touch and the human sound.
Yeah, they're already implementing a lot of that in many different fields, and I think people already kind of don't like it. I mean, just look at the music field on how programmed drums have been swapped out for real drums just for the sake
Right.
of cost. People like that, but then when they listen to a Led Zeppelin song and it's real drums that aren't actually on time with big, big sound opposed to quantized drums that are aligned to the click and every snare sound is the exact same sound, they start to be like, you know what, this is very robotic. And this is
Exactly.
very, I don't know what this is. And I think, like you said, that human touch, as long as humans still have a pulse in them, I think there's going to
You're
be
right.
like a connection to that no matter what field you're working in, you know?
Right. I think so too. And this whole AI subject matter is really coming up for me constantly. Vivi Fluoride song is I song is all about her being an advanced AI, and it's so close to it parallels Westworld quite a bit, and
Hmm.
that had a huge imprint on my psyche. That whole trauma of getting through Westworld was amazing, but this is becoming. I think it's a taste of the future is now, and we're starting to see where we're going evolving beyond humans handling all the workload.
Mm.
And I think that's just an ongoing fantasy for humans to find a way to offload the strife and the hardcore, what's the word, in the trenches working toil. Really minimizing toil on the human condition is what is born of the AI, or vice versa. AI is born of those desires. But have we ever seen a version of it where it doesn't go out of control and destroy us?
Well,
It's just, yeah.
how about, have you ever seen a perfect utopia where people are constantly always happy and don't have to go through, like you said, strife or be in the shit? Like, that's a huge part of the human condition. Struggle isn't always a bad thing. Death is a part of life. That's a
Dark and
beautiful thing. There are many different perceptions that go into that, and I think as long as people have a thought in their head, they're not going to throw that away. They're going to constantly come back to it. We're just kind of ingrained to do that, and I don't think trying to make life, I mean, didn't Einstein say life should be easy, not easier? It's like,
Oh,
how much easier do we need to make it? I think life's already pretty easy, pretty good, you know what I'm saying? Just with how we're working with each other. If we continue to follow that, I think we're going to be okay.
I'd also encourage Carl Jung's writing about the shadow, the collective shadow, and especially when wrestling with depression and dark thoughts, that we as a society, as a culture, shun the dark behaviors, but they have a place, and they must be expressed before they become compounded to the point that they explode, and then they're no longer controllable, but just straight up acting out and hurting others. But these dark thoughts and dark moments in life, the shadow itself, the collective shadow, has its place. And it was a very deep philosophical study that my husband and I got into. He turned me on to the whole discussion of the collective shadow, and how the necessity for that lives in conflict in our storytelling, and with antagonists and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have stories that are just all linear stories of light. They always must run into some sort of challenge, which inevitably becomes the conflict and the shadow. And so, even if you have a behavior that you are ashamed of, or is not appropriate, or that isn't something that you're proud of, it has its place to be expressed before it turns into something festering and dark, or darker or dangerous per se. So, yeah, there are ups and downs in life, and they're all important. Both sides of the contrast are necessary to achieve balance.
Yeah, the yin yang isn't all white for a reason.
Oh,
You know, I think it
right.
takes a lot of people a long time to really understand that duality that is
Exactly.
embodied there. But that duality is part of the human condition, and some people can go through life never even having to ask those questions. And boy, oh boy, do I envy them. But for the people who do, they definitely, if they understand both sides of the pond, there's some definite beauty out there, no doubt about that. What do you feel is the biggest difference between voice acting for an anime and voice acting for a video game? Or is there not even really a difference at all, and it's pretty much the same kind of workflow?
I think the base level is very similar, but the styles are dissimilar. For theatrical content, you're going to have much more nuance, much more detail in that character's experience, certainly in the scenes that you get with those characters. And generally, for games, they're mostly RPGs that we're voicing, and they tend to be a little more fantasy based, a little more enhanced, more uh, stylized. They tend to go into a world, usually a world of fantasy on some level, either something fantastical in the past or in the future, something along the lines of, oh God, forgetting the name. The great story that we all just watched last year, the best TV sci-fi story ever.
Uh, I don't know.
That
I'm
I
drawing
can't.
a blank.
And Game of Thrones.
Okay.
Hello, Game of Thrones. Yeah. So we tend to place our characters in a format that requires a little more support in the voice, a little more dynamic, a little more physicality, because inevitably there's some sort of combat or fighting that's involved. So sometimes video game voices can be harder on your vocal cords, and they can be a little more demanding energetically. The thing that's hard for me with video games is that we usually don't have a lot of artwork. So I'll remember a character and their story, but I may not identify them very well visually,
Mm,
and that's fine because the story much more in those cases takes place in the mind. So you're being fed the scenery, you're being told what's going on rather than seeing it.
gotcha.
Yeah, with anime, you it's all visually based.
Yeah.
So any kind of animation, yeah.
I've heard you speak about your mother's background with addiction. You mentioned that you were younger, you would listen to her reading and speaking about these topics. I also have a very huge background in that subject and grew up with the same type of household. My grandfather has stories that are printed in AA's Big Book, which is kind of like their Bible, if you're aware of that. Um, that if that also kind of gives you an idea of how bad it is in my genes as well. Um, Even though it's very clear that you've learned how to harness a lot of these tools that you might have gotten genetically, I guess you could say, because I know that's how you view it. Do you still feel addictive traits in your everyday life, though? And do you see some of those addictive tendencies come out when you're getting into character development? Do you feel that it actually helps you in some ways more than the regular person? Because I don't know, addicts are pretty like hyper focused. They really get into things. And even though you might not be an addict yourself, you might carry some of those traits. So I was just curious if you ever noticed any of those parallels while you're working in your art or any of the arts
Oh,
that you've
wow, this is your
dabbed in.
question.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Wow. Yeah, addiction wasn't as big of a factor as alcoholism, which is its
Hmm.
own addiction, of course.
Hmm.
And in the genre that my parents grew up in, getting help for that was still pretty new. So there really weren't weren't aware of self-help at all or self-improvement really, even though the genre had already been going and there were some publications and movements. So it was really because, coupled with the fact that my mother has so much Native American blood, and we had a tragedy in the family when I was a young girl, a death in the family. We lost my brother who was a year older than me, whom I never knew. He was gone by the time I was 3. It's threw her into a spiral of alcoholism. Obviously, trying to self medicate and survive the loss of a child is about as devastating as any incident can be for a family, much less for a mother.
Yeah.
And so she came into drinking very late in life. She wasn't a boozer person at all. And be coupled with her genetics, with being predisposed as a Native American, it just threw her in a very devastating spiral. And we, through my childhood, were in constant search for help, and it's not something that she wanted. She didn't want to be addicted or out of control or be a bad mother or a bad person or anything like that. So once we were guided to 12 steps and AA, it was a massive shift in the most positive way in both of our lives. And once she was in with a sponsor and working very well with the steps, it just worked for her spiritually. She believed in a higher power. She was very metaphysical, almost shamanistic in her beliefs. And the way the program is structured, it's about your higher power, whatever that may be. So no judgment, no conformity. You don't have to believe in Christ. You don't have to, but you can be a Christian. You can do both, and it's remarkable. So I was a young girl, and I would go to the meetings and fall asleep in her lap, but I was picking up all the information. So I was very interested in a lot of what was being said because I'm a truth seeker. I was just seeking knowledge from the youngest age, and it was working for us. So I was so grateful to have that influence in my life. And I think it really paved the way for seeking self improvement, working on self, constantly looking for betterment, and continuing your higher studies as an adult human being throughout life. And that road opened to me in the youngest stages, which really throughout my life. I don't wrestle with addiction, but I identify that I'm genetically predisposed to addiction. So I'm very careful with anything that could be overdone. And that includes workaholic. You know, I have to, if anything, that might be my uh,
Vice.
pre, yeah, maybe that's where it goes. But I think that a lot of what I operate from is consciousness. I have a responsibility. I can't let people down. I have a deadline. I need to make this. I gave my word. I have to honor it. Those things that create your character as a human being, the fabric, your muster, what you are. And I want my word to mean something. And I want to be able for people to entrust me in confidence, and that means something, that it won't be repeated if that's what I'm agreeing to. And I also won't agree to those things if I don't think I can keep the confidence. So fairness and responsibility and coming and going in your life. I don't think that I approach characters that way, but I identify those traits in characters that I portray, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely.
In Planetus, I played a character named Fee, who was a smoker, and she is a space debris reclaimer. So she goes out with her space missions to reclaim space junk. I just thought the concept was so brilliant. Space junk is going to become a real issue for us in the
Yeah,
future. I mean, it
right.
already is, but yeah. And so her whole team had to devise a way where she'd be able to smoke in, you know, a pressurized cabin. So they created a little pod for her that goes out into space. So every time she wants to smoke, she doesn't get to go outside and have a relaxing experience. She's got to go to a little pod and breathe the smoke. And I just thought, look at what addiction does to us, you know, and we should depict that stuff in life. And, you know, I've tried, my mother really had trouble quitting smoking. I finally got her to a hypnotist, which really helped.
Wow,
She
great.
was successful for a long time. She did go back to it, but the last time she went back to it was her last time, and then it was over. But it took,
Nice.
the addiction gene was so deep for her. It was something I think I learned from and made sure I wasn't. You know, where you take your examples from your family and your parents and you try to overcome them, and it continue the evolution in the family chain to get away from the bad behaviors and enhance the good ones.
Well, I'm glad that that didn't stick with you. That's amazing to hear. When you're auditioning at home, what type of microphone have you been using? Do you have a favorite?
I had a
Cool.
microphone that I used for singing. When we went into lockdown, we were having to order a lot of equipment and there was no work. So a lot of people were really struggling with making large investments into their home studios. And many people tried to wait. I tried to wait it out too. I thought maybe it was just going to be a few week thing. And
I
when
think a
I
lot of
figured
people did.
out, yeah, I was like, okay, you got to come back to reality. The denial's not working here. So my husband helped me put together the materials that we already had. And then we worked with a couple studios to figure out what were the basic things I needed to add. So I had a really good Rode NTK tube mic that loves my voice for singing. So it's been working great for voiceover. So I did not have to invest in but it's a nice
Nice.
powered, lovely. Everybody's been very, very happy with the sound of it. And I've never worked with one with dialogue, only for music.
At the time you were approached with the job, did you know anything about Outlaw Star, or was it just a random anime that just crossed on your desk and hey, here's a new job?
I never knew about any title we ever worked on except for Akira when we did the 10-year or 15-year anniversary version, and I got attached to it and got to play the lead K, um, which is really a secondary character because it's all about male characters in that show. But no, we had no way of knowing. I mean, honestly, it was way pre-internet. So, I mean, even I don't think we really had internet until Digimon. And when we started Digimon, I didn't have a home computer. I don't think I had a computer until 2 or 3 years into working on Digimon. And
Gotcha.
what we did is my husband and I shared a computer. I mean, I can't imagine doing that today. There's no way. We both have our own offices and we're both on it, you know, hours in the day. Um, but there was no way to research titles. What we would get were little glimpses of information from people who would travel to Japan and find out what the popular shows were there. And we did have people that would be recruited to go over and go to conventions and industry gatherings and find out what the hot shows were and what the buzz was and what was selling in the toy lines,
Mhm.
things like that. And then we would catch the information from people coming back and saying, this show's really hot in Japan. We think we might be dubbing it. We're bidding on this. Or that's how we would find out about material. There was no way to research it, to listen to it in Japanese unless you bought something.
Mm.
Certainly wasn't going to do that when I'm trying to make a living voicing the material. Um, so yeah, I never knew anything about a title until I was attached to it, until I was either auditioning for it or working on it. There was
Did
no way to do it.
Did you originally audition for Twilight Suzuka, or were there other characters that you read for before it landed on her?
We started Outlaw Star, and I was approached to direct it. So there's not like an audition for directing. So it was at a time when Zero Limit and Magnitude 8, the studios that we were working for, were on fire. And they had so many titles at that time: animes, Zero Limit, Magnitude 8. Those are the studio production company and director's company that were merged together. And Yutaka, the owner of Zero Limit, was very instrumental in my career as far as giving me fantastic opportunities at great roles. And he and Kevin Seymour, late Kevin Seymour, who was very, very instrumental in my career as well, and also hugely important, he and Carl Masek were bringing over anime from Japan to the States and trying to get Hollywood proper to understand this is a thing that's going to stay. It's not a fad. It's not a
Yeah.
trend. It's a fixture in our pop culture, as we all know now. Um, so as I was directing the show, um, I was I already had been given a cast. I wasn't involved in the auditions. I think they told me I was going to be directing it, and then they gave me scripts to start reading, and auditions were happening at the same time. And I was dying to audition for the show, but I didn't want to stick my neck out and say, can I also maybe have a part in the show too?
Hmm.
So it was the first time I directed for Zero Limit. So I wanted to wait and try to be a good girl and be patient, because at the same time I was recording Cowboy Bebop. So also with the same production team. So I thought, don't be greedy. You've got this fantastic role here. But when I came to the story arc and saw Twilight Suzuka, I petitioned hard to be able to audition or play the part. And they said I didn't have to audition and that they would think about it. So I thought, oh gosh, I don't know if I've already been offensive that I've stuck this is the thing. When you're straddling both sides of production, you're going to be a behind the scenes part of the production team and you're an actress. There are times you have to leave the actor aside and sacrifice the wants and desires of the actor for the betterment of being part of the production team. And you have to use you put on your big girl pants and make the right choice for the production and put your ego and your personal desires aside. I split myself like that all the time. And when I am forced to do that, I'm always taking the higher road of the production team, not what the actress wants. But anyway, I got up the nerve to ask. And I think they ran it by Sony. I think it was Sony at that time. It may have still been Sunrise. I'm not sure. Do you know if Outlaw Star was Sunrise or Sony?
It was Sunrise.
It was Sunrise.
Yeah.
So they approved it.
Nice.
And that's between the team, they agreed that it was all right for me to play her. However, I think I disappointed everybody because I called her Twilight Suzuka, and I think they wanted her to be Suzuka instead of Suzuka. I don't know if I've ever revealed that before.
That's interesting. It wouldn't be the first nor the last
Pronunciations.
brain fart. Translation error. I'm gonna actually show you something that Steve sent to me. I had him sign a couple of these shots, but this shot is an infamous shot when they do the character bios in one of the episodes. And if you look up on the top, it doesn't say Harry McDougal. It says Henry McDougal.
Oh, it does say Henry.
there's a few different spots in the show where it was just it had to have been a translation error because it was so obvious that it was like you guys paid attention to detail, so I don't think it just like went through. I think it was a translation, something or
Wow.
another.
Well, we find that English, sort of signs within a show, and they're
Hmm.
just spelled just a little bit wrong,
Hmm.
or yeah, it's actually really cute. I feel kind of warm about the whole thing.
I think those things are actually really, really interesting, especially when you see multiple dubs happen or they change things like you're saying, street signs to different languages,
Yeah.
because then you can see different versions of it and how different translators come into play, which we all know Outlaw Star had their fair share of animators, so we get a lot of different vibes going on with that one. Aside from Twilight Suzuka, who is your favorite character from the Outlaw Star universe?
Oh, that's really hard when you ask your directress because one, I already feel like the team mom when I'm directing anything, and I take great care to put my wings around everybody and love everyone and take good care of them. But two, it's like, who's your favorite kid? There's a part of you that feels remiss if you're flattering one and forgetting another. So that's really rough. But I felt very strongly about each character. Of course, Gene and Jim were my guys, and I loved Peter Spellos in the voice of the vehicle. I can't remember the names now. It's been so long. Um, I loved working with his gentleness and the way that he's just a big presence, an amazing guy, and I would have him sort of recline and drop his shoulders down and give me this very laid back version of himself. And he would always say that he felt like it was a meditative exercise because I would really bring him into this soft, soothing zone. Um, I loved our female characters. I loved Lenore Zan as Aisha Clan Clan. I'm in touch with her on Twitter recently, and she's not really working in the business anymore, but is
Hmm.
very politically involved. Super proud of her journey, and we used to always talk politics anyway, so we had very similar, extremely liberal ideas. Yes, many artists are liberals, you guys. We're good people. You should love everyone equally.
It's funny that you say that the guy who played Gilliam had such that chill voice and calming voice because I even remember certain episodes when, for lack of a better way of saying it, when shit is hitting the fan, Gilliam's still like, well, you guys might want to take care of this problem that's going on,
Yes.
and just this like chill, doesn't even care like mentality, which is a hilarious icebreaker when everyone else is kind of freaking out on the ship.
And there we go. AI. We're back to another AI presence. Yes.
Have you ever read the original Outlaw Star manga?
I've never read any manga.
All right.
Never. The comic book format for me with bubble text and stuff
Mhm.
is just really chaotic for my brain. I'm not sure why. It's never been a smooth read for me. So I only use manga as a reference. I'll reference certain things, but
Nice.
no.
Well, you're going to find some of this to be actually really interesting. I paid a few people to do some translations myself, as well as there's a few like huge fans of Outlaw Star who are trying to do an English translation for the public. Almost every country got a version of that manga except for America for some reason. They tried to push it forward, but it just plans fell through and it just never happened. But based on my research, I think you'll be interested to know Twilight Suzuka is introduced as the same time as Aisha is. And unlike the anime, the two seem to be teamed up as a partner before they come into contact with the rest of the team. Um, Her character bio is extremely similar to the anime, so you guys, whatever notes you got along with it, were pretty spot on. So that was really really close, and it's worth mentioning that some of the character story arcs in the manga are 180% different than what the anime is. Totally different in more of a darker, more adult kind of way. I don't mean adult like adult anime, but more
Like
of a
writing. Yeah.
mature, kind of story. Um, Her character has issues with Fred Luo, just like the anime, so that was pretty good to see. Volume 2 alludes that there's 3 volumes in the set with a couple chapters that would have made a volume 4. but the show or the manga stopped at that time. It said that Volume 2 alludes to Suzuka having a brief relationship of shorts with Gene. Then she shows up years later, and they reference it just like very, very briefly, but don't speak about it much at all. It also seems that Suzuka works for the main bad guy in the manga called Rin Rutso, which is completely different from the bad guy in the anime. Apparently, the whole Anten 7 was creative liberties that the show took. Quite a few different changes that the show took. Some of the choices that they made for the American audience made perfect sense. It made perfect sense for American audiences, younger audiences. It was fine. But then when you see some of the other changes, there's going to be a part of you that's going to be like, I would have liked to see that happen. That would have been interest. Why didn't that happen? Kind of thing, which is really crazy and makes everyone want the season 2 to happen. But at this point, I'm okay with a reboot not coming. But I recently spoke with Steve about his time working on Outlaw Star, and he mentioned that additional to voicing Twilight Suzuka, you had a more in-depth role in the show. As you said, you were the director. Can you tell us more about the hats that you wore on Outlaw Star? It does say that the internet says that you did Twilight Suzuka's voice, other K-Pirates voices, as well as ADR video directing. But did you have any other fun hats that you wore, from the day-to-day over there? Or any fun voices that you can remember? Are you the cactus? That's what we want to know.
The cactus. What?
Okay, fans will like it if you don't remember that. You don't. There's an episode where there's a cactus that's possessed by some sort of demon, and it like is serving ice cream. And it's the same episode where they dress up Gene as Spike from Cowboy Bebop.
What?
It's like episode 19 or something. You got to go back and watch it because you're going to see this. You're going to be like, wait, talking cactus?
Wow. I wonder if I even knew that. No, this is when you said talking cactus. I half thought, are you punking me? Because something like that happened. I can't remember. What a trip. Yeah, the K pirate, that Chinese one that was very mysterious.
Yeah, the fans.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, that was so cool. And that they cast me in. And I was so excited about that part because they had great powers and also the Chinese influence. It was just, that was very cool. Other hats, I think I suggested some casting. They were pretty tight about casting for that show. Other shows, I'm very free to bring in people that I want to bring in. I think in this case, I could only suggest people that I wanted. There was a big stir up about our lead character.
Interesting.
Lead character could have gone a different way. I think I have to be careful about what I say, but I'll just say that both Kevin Seymour and I petitioned for our Gene, and we won.
Nice. Well, I think you guys, well, not knowing the other side, I don't know if I can say you made the right decision or not, but I think everyone really likes Gene, so I think they're happy with, the decision you guys made,
Yay. What I remember is this. I was directing a show during the day called Moncali Nights. That was for Saban Productions. So I recorded 9 to 6 with that. Then every night, I think at 6:30, I started Outlaw Star, 6:30, 7:30, 8:30, 9:30, 10:30. I think that's right. We did 6:30 to 10:30 every night. So I was doing double shifts for months. And it was really tough work, really tough work. I mean, to be in the studio just fixated on dialogue, yeah. So what I would do is I had a really quick half-hour dinner break, and I would often try to get veggie sushi rolls and bring them to the studio, and then I would, work in snack time. But it was a time in my life that was leading up to me preparing for my wedding. So it was really just a very positive time in my life where I was so much in love and loved what I was working on. I mean, love was just like filling. I loved working as Faye. I loved working on Bebop. I was totally interested and just fascinated with Outlaw Star. All the metaphysical discussion that goes on, and all the crystals and the ley lines and all that happens in Outlaw Star was just so up my alley, all my interests. And and then looking forward to my evenings with, you know, my forever love. And it was just like this time in my life where I was burning at both ends. The weekends just flew by. And I think I was even adapting some scripts in between all of that. So I think I
Wow.
was like working on the weekends at home. And it's not unusual that, and I tell people this, you have your workhorse years in production where you just double up and you just burn at both ends. And you've got to be the gauge of how much you can take. You just have to know before you break that you're reaching a breaking point and get some time off, you know, and get into nature. Like take a walk, like get outside, sit on the grass, do something away from, you know, machines.
You mentioned that there's a pieces of you in almost every single character that you do, and as you were mentioned, you know, you read for Twilight Suzuka, and we're just like this character arc is great. What similarities in her do you think that you um, connect with? You know?
Well, I think that she had the movements of a dancer. I think she was very choreographed, and when I would voice her combat, I moved with her. I tried to match as much of her movement as I
Wow.
could. I think she was the definition of like the proper woman, and she was deadly. And that was unusual at the time. Now we see a lot of female characters that carry both of those qualities, and more power to them. It's so refreshing and lovely to see. But she was, I felt like she was a tactician. She came in for the kill. She didn't waste energy. There wasn't a whole lot of, when I find you, this is what I'm going to do. And when I do it, you'll know it. I mean, she just went in and the guy was gone. You know, it was precision attacks. And she had grace and she was nimble and she um, had sort of a Mona Lisa smile that I borrow at times. Like there's this, like she'll cooperate with you to a point, and then there's a part of her sort of grinning because she's thinking you have no idea what lies behind that smile and what she's really capable of. And a lot of that intersects with me.
No,
And
very much so. I mean, as you're sitting here speaking about how you work with the team and just your sheer dedication alone, you know, you definitely see a lot more of those strong female characters. But I mean, at the time you were reading that role, I mean, the irony is so thick right now, it's hard to speak. But I mean, you were embodying those very things at that very time. So that's so appropriate for you to mesh
oh,
with her and to be with her because that just seems so fitting. I mean, though you would do great as a Hilda and some of these other voices, you know what I mean? You probably would do a really good Jim too, as weird as that visual might be.
Kim would have been great. Yeah.
But I think no, that makes perfect sense on how you could really feel connected to that character. I mean, it's quite a testament for you too, because like you said, splitting apart the director and the actor, and sometimes having to petition, work hard, be deadly, or like you're saying, you know, we got to trim fat, we got to know how to work in the studio. You know what I mean? Like, just like you said, there's no fat to her. She's just straight to the point, and you know,
Yeah.
if that's not describing yourself in some of these instances, I don't know what would be. So that's really cool.
Even if it's not me, I sometimes take from those experiences and
Hmm.
they're teaching me in some cases, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, character development is weird like that because when you really get into it, I mean, you do, when you break away, some people have hard times if they're method actors or if they're just really into it, but you definitely take a piece of that if you're able to. And most of the time, that can really help your own character development in so many ways, you know? Many people say that the success of Cowboy Bebop overshadowed Outlaw Star.
Mhm.
Bandai's marketing plan was to release each show one after another in the summer of 1998. It was something along the lines of like July, uh, Bebop came out. August, Outlaw Star. You're talking about like the best of best summer for kids, and Bandai had to have been walking around with these magic cards in their pocket, like, I can't wait until the world sees what we got working. I'm just curious, do you think that Outlaw Star got the credit it deserved after all these years, or do you think it's still one of these cult classic OG underdogs that has influenced sci-fi but still is really hush hush and not many people know about it?
I did always feel like what happened to the Outlaw Star Love? I thought it was going to be a bigger show, actually. I heard great things about it, so I knew, and I was starting to get direct contact with fans at conventions and receiving some fan mail and stuff about it. So I knew it was mattering to a lot of people, and that it was appreciated. But I thought it was such a I thought there were so many elements of it that were so cool that it would take off and be bigger. I actually thought maybe we'd get another season. So I didn't ever really know that there was a reason for that. You just sort of assume some take off and some don't. But
Yeah.
promotion helps a lot, and it's really was so important in those days when you didn't have a free outlet for viewing.
Toonami picking up these shows definitely helped in a lot of different ways. But those were a little bit more down the years, you know?
Yeah.
And it's weird because I think in pop culture and in sci-fi, it's very obvious that Outlaw Star influenced a lot of work, and people reference it all the time, from The Fifth Element to Firefly to all these other things where it's like, okay, if this isn't a carbon copy ripoff, I don't know what is. But it's astonishing to me that it didn't get picked up, but it makes sense. I mean, Bebop was huge, but it seemed like Outlaw Star was just for a special type of viewer, while there might have been some other characteristics to some of the characters, like Faye and Spike and some of these other people, that I think might have worked in a bigger audience, while Outlaw Star kind of catered to, at least in my experience, I just think young guys. Young
Yeah.
guys who identified with Gene and identified with being lost, and it was more honed into that, the loss of the father, the whole story arc really coming into play with that. And I think it's good for the series, but I think it also kind of hurt them in a way because it was really geared towards just that one kind of audience. Even though, like you said, very strong female characters in there and a lot of things that people could jive with, but I mean, it was all revolving around Gene, you know?
Mhm. As you're saying this, I'm thinking that Outlaw Star and Bebop could have launched from the same freaking galactic
Universe.
port. I mean, yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, they really could coexist. They could very much have been the same world, time. I hadn't
There's
really thought of
many,
that before.
yeah, there are many parallels that could have been exploited, and not just the fact that they're all space westerns. Like they're just as these relatable parallels in the storylines to some of the greater kind of bigger, meatier things you get from the story, you know, not just fast action, but maybe some of the life lessons and things like that, where I think
Yeah.
that some of these things could intertwine.
I just also wanted to say that I see Ichigo a bit in Gene from
Hmm.
Bleach. I kind of can see some of that going on, and I had never connected other shows to Outlaw, but perhaps there have been some influences.
There are a few that fans have pointed out, more notably Fifth Element, Serenity, Firefly. Those are obvious. Josh Whedon can lie through his teeth all day. I don't think anyone will believe him. But there are a bunch of different shows and movies in sci-fi that have to do with the ship, the
I
ultimate
see.
woman, the woman being the key, the woman being the answer, some sort of relationship between the two, a man willing to throw everything away for his chance at love, you know, giving away power. Like these tropes, you could say maybe they're even not even original to Outlaw Star, but the way that Outlaw Star package it with like I mean, even Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean
Mhm.
that band of heroes that band together in a ship, you know, doing what they're doing. It's you'll start to pull it out if you start to like look into it more, and that's where I always was like, well, at least people did see it. It might not be as big, but there is an undeniable hit into pop culture. Like people did definitely get influenced by it, no doubt.
How does it hold up, like the quality of audio and stuff?
I think it holds up actually pretty well. I think some people, I've heard some fans say when they go back and watch it, they're like, you know, half the season's just a space race, and that's a little bit boring. And I'm like, oh, come on, get out of here. But no, I think it lives up well. I think the animation screams 90s, but for
Right,
the
right.
best thing possible. It
Stylized, right.
it's got the Bandai feel. The soundtrack still to this day. I sampled it for this podcast. That's how much it still will hold up. Some of the greatest music for that kind of feel. I really do
Nice.
think it holds well in a comparative sense. I really think it holds well because there is a lot of bad anime out there, and I think comparatively it's really good. But standing on its own 2 feet, I always tell people, hey, it's 26 episodes. It's a quick, fun show. You'll definitely jive with it. It's good.
And isn't it hand drawn? Is it their cells?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Hmm. It's pretty rare to be able to find cells anymore. There was a time where you would find them everywhere.
Yeah, and Outlaw Star cells, depending on who you're speaking to, can go kind of high, but they're definitely out there. And you're right, it's definitely a thing of the past. And even though Outlaw Star had a bunch of different illustrators that worked on the team, so there is a little bit of inconsistency. It didn't matter. They were all doing the same production work, still working at the Bay, still using all cell work. So that's, from the collecting point of view, that's definitely a fun one to chase after. Did you ever get the chance to meet the creator of the show?
Oh
Uh,
no,
no, never.
I wish. No.
Okay.
There was never, yeah, they don't think much of the dubs, to be honest, guys. I mean, it's like we're dealing with post production, so prime principal photography, all the majority of the budget has been used up front to create the whole production. Then it's all done and packaged. Well, if you want to get it to a bigger audience, you're going to have to provide a dub. And so they scrape together a budget for dub, but it is low and they want it fast and they want it now. And
Hmm.
it's the nature of post production. It's just like there's very little left in the budget when it comes to that. But that back end, investing in it makes all the difference for it to live on and make, bank in reruns.
Oh yeah, it's hitting a huge audience at that point in time, and it's definitely worth it. It stinks that you weren't able to meet him, but it's obvious that, or I shouldn't say it's obvious, but it's pretty normal. It's kind of, from what I've heard, it's rare that the creators will come along with that to be even,
So
knocking on their door saying hi, unless they're one of those people who are invested from, start to finish, every single word they want to be overseeing and things like that. From my understanding, the creator of this show got sick, and he ended the show, sorry, not the show. He ended the manga, and on the last page it says, I could pull out the translation. I'll send you an email of it, but it says something along the lines of like, I really enjoyed making this, but I'm feeling sick lately, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish this, but maybe
wow.
I'll be back soon, and I hope you enjoy Outlaw Star. Something along those lines. But I think he sold it off, so I don't think he was ever able to like work on it again. Like there's some dojins that have preliminary drawings, but I don't think he owns it. So I think at that point he was just like, I'm sick. I'm gonna sell it off. So by the time you probably saw it, he was already cashing his checks and hanging out, doing whatever at that point.
Honestly, the only time we really run into creators wanting to be a part of the dubs are usually for feature films. When
Gotcha.
it's going to get a theatrical release, then oftentimes the client and the creators want to be there. Usually, and I'm all for that. Sometimes people are uncomfortable with that, but I'm all for it because I know I can make them happy and I know I can charm them and in the best sense, making them feel at ease and so forth. But I also know that I can get answers to my questions quickly. So I can get total approval by the creative team right then and there instead of waiting for another
Months,
process.
yeah, or
Yeah.
whatever it might take, yeah.
it could be a big cost save to have your clients right there. So I always
Oh yeah.
appreciate and utilize them when they're available.
From a previous interview you did, you mentioned that Cowboy Bebop is a perfect segue for people to get into anime. You felt that it just embodies really everything you're going to need. Where do you think Outlaw Star sits? Do you think that's a good one for people to jump on? Do you think they need to appreciate it? Do you think they need to see some classics and maybe even some bad anime to really appreciate how good this small series is?
Wow. I feel like it might be a good stepping stone because people are going to assume that it's sci-fi, that anime is sci-fi on some level,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's got a good balance of different cultures, villains, the good guys, conflict, the objectives that they're after. I think it could be a good kind of gateway. It's just you're going to have to go with the convention that it's 90s animation, and that's what it is. But it's like great color saturation and very defined, picture all around. And the creativity is kind of off the charts in the show. I think it could be. It might be hard if girls are not locking into the female characters, just if they're not locking into the males rather, and that they're waiting for the female characters. But they will deliver. As you know, the cast is very diverse. So perhaps it is a good one. I don't know. I mean, I think so because of the metaphysical aspects of the larger themes and sacred geometry that's woven into it, and the all the unanswered questions that really challenge an adult's thinking, I think. So that is classic in that Eastern storytelling doesn't always knit the ending together nicely and give you a clean, happy ending. And you're going to be left to work stuff out. And it's going to be haunting you when you hit the end of most series.
Yeah, I think some series might tie the bow on nice, and even though you could say that Outlaw Star is unresolved in some way, there is a level of ambiguity there, and you do kind of have to take it. Even though some of it is painted for you. I mean, you understand where these characters go, and you understand, when they get to the ley line, what matters to them. And I don't know. I think though people might be able to find some holes in it, they might think Aisha's annoying or a few other things, but I still think at the end of the day, it's a pretty good thing. And a testament again, even though it is very 90s in a lot of way, you're right. The colors are great. The characters are extremely flushed out, which are really, really nice. Even some of the type of character archetypes are even more, let's say, socially acceptable these days, like
Mm.
Fred. You know what I mean? So I think that it does definitely hold up. And still to this day, I see people all the time saying that Aisha is still one of their favorite, like, leading female characters of all time. And I see that from people who don't even like watch older anime. They're just like, this iconic character has always like lived up, which is weird because either they really love her or they really think she's annoying. But either way, she's living over the test of time. So good for her, that iconic character.
I think Lenore would love that. I think that she and I would both rather that you had a strong impression from a character we did rather than like, meh, it's beige. Like that's sudden death for a creative soul.
Aisha was huge in that way for a number of reasons. Not only it was just the character archetype was definitely something interesting and something different, and I say the annoying thing with all due respect. I actually think they played into it well, and that's probably a lot of credit to you to push it to make her really get into that mode, and she just sells it. She's great. I
Banshee,
mean,
Banshee girl, yeah.
in regards to Cartoon Network editing out episode 23, censoring references to Suzuka being an assassin in the first appearance, and even toning down Fred Luo's sexuality. Do you know of any, or are you aware of any other huge edits that happened to the American anime that maybe didn't make it to air?
No, I did not know that that happened. I didn't know that Cartoon Network had a hand in any editing. I'd never heard that.
When Toonami aired the show, they only aired 25 episodes. They didn't air 26. The Hot Springs episode was never aired because it was deemed, too risque for children.
There was some nudity, right?
There was like one scene of Aisha
Yeah.
topless, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But the baffling thing to every single fan was, okay, so we have a 2-second nudity clip, but we lose the whole episode, and at the end of the episode, he gets the two most important shells.
Here. That's it? Only one of each of them?
A word of warning, my red-headed friend. Those are very special shells you're holding. They're infused with a magic that's much stronger than any of the rest. However, in order to activate the shells in these times of weak mana, a certain catalyst is needed.
Like what? What kind of catalyst?
You'd like to know?
I'm still waiting.
It's the life force of the one who fires the caster.
So when you watched the show growing up, it just went from, they just skipped that episode and all of a sudden Gene had all the shells. It never made sense. So when people got the DVD, they were like, whoa, what is this episode? Oh my gosh, now this makes a bunch of sense. And what's even funnier is there's a whole bunch of Easter eggs in that episode that the animators linked in. It's huge. But additional to that, and I'll give a shout out to Mantis of Outlaw Star Nexus. He actually got one of your binders from the booth, and in there, yeah, we found it on eBay, or he found it on eBay and picked it up. There's a whole bunch of notes inside of there, but I believe that's where he figured out that they toned down her being an assassin as much as it was, because something about like, we don't want her to be a huge killer, we want her to be more likable or something like that. And then Fred Luo's character is super gay, and they just were like, no, we have to tone that down. Like, we obviously can't tone it down every scene he is being super gay, but we have to like tone this down for like 13-year-olds. We can't do it.
I think today that might be approached differently, but that's a good indicator that there is evolution taking place with our studios and with the audiences. Yeah.
And it makes sense for a younger audience. You know, you wouldn't want some of these things in here, even if the episodes had crucial information, but you would think over time they would release that stuff. And in newer animes, they do. But just imagine not knowing that as a kid. How many kids watched that show and never knew that that episode was on there? It's always hilarious to tell that story, because they're just like, wait, there's an episode there? And it's like, yeah, there is.
Does it mess up the storytelling by losing that?
Yeah.
It does, right?
The shells that he shoots at Hazanko.
I came for my second place prize.
Damn it, Gene Starwind!
Eat this!
At the last episode that puts him in the ball and takes away half of his life force. You learn why it does that in the Hot Springs episode.
Of course.
So that's why fans were baffled. They're like, couldn't you just edit the one scene? Like, this is super important.
That it's funny, editing may have been much more expensive then. Now it's all digital and it wouldn't have been a big deal, but that may have come down to a dollars and cents sort of thing. But I know that at the time the formula was every series had a Hot Springs episode.
Yeah. It was
yeah.
That wasn't anything that was too crazy, but when it came to the American audience, I have half a mind of thinking Cartoon Network was like, oh, this episode has nudity, cut it. They didn't even watch the episode.
Yeah.
They're just like, nope, done, get it out of here.
That's right. Yeah, when I was doing a lot of, even Digimon was one of them, network shows, we always had a broadcasting standards and measures person that had to run all the scripts through, and they had to view all the episodes prior to screening. And in some shows, I had a nutritionalist, I had a doctor, and they were all consulted before the show could go to air. And sometimes they would veto episodes, and they would just say it's just too pervasive within this episode. We're losing the whole episode. So that could happen, or they would reanimate once in a while if there was a budget for it. And often they would just edit around stuff, or have us. They would change. Yeah, they would edit around, give us more reverse shots, so you're not seeing the speaker, and replacing the dialogue to sort of fill in what you've taken out.
which is the more common practice of cropping or doing something of the sort, which is why it was always baffling that it's like, why did they get rid of that whole episode? And most people didn't know that until the black box came out and they got all 3 discs, you know, that infamous DVD set, and they're like, wait, what the hell? Because
Oh man.
they came out with VHSs, but they were this big VHS like collection, and those were more expensive. But the DVD, once it got sold off, they started making mass production, and a number of people that I grew up with were like, "Dude, did you see this? Did you know this happened?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, it's crazy." Like, but whatever. I'm a giant nerd.
Wild.
I think I mentioned before, I am the biggest Outlaw Star collector in the States. Half of my room is all music stuff, but the other half is literally everything Outlaw Star. I've only met one other collector that's about as crazy as me, and he's in the UK. But I think I got him beat on a couple items. Just kidding.
How did it become your favorite?
My dad died when I was young. I think that influenced me a lot because when I saw the show, I very much like influenced with Gene, of this dude who just felt super lost and was super alone. And I watched it at the perfect time growing up. And I also think I watched a lot of bad anime. Growing up watching Dragon Ball Z and all those filler episodes and all this other stuff. That when I saw Outlaw Star, I was like, man, this is fun. I can relate with it. It's really, really a really, really good time. And over the years,
Quite a bit. Yeah, that's a class show. I mean, Outlaw Star compared to Dragon Ball. Even though I played Bulma for some time.
it just it stuck over the years, and it was funny because I liked the show a lot, but I'd watch it every once in a while, but I wasn't one of those people that would watch it constantly. So it always was fresh, and I knew I liked it, so I kept it at arm's length. And then a couple years ago, my obsession got so big with it that it got completely out of hand. But it's always been a joy of mine, and
Have you shared it with a lot of people?
With Outlaw Star in general?
Other people onto it, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Well, most people who see the show, they find it hard to find other people near them who like the show. They might find a friend or might find a friend, but it never got that big marketing thing, so it's hard to find close fans who can nerd out with it. But I've sampled Outlaw Star in music. I've been meeting people and talking about the show since I was like 15 years old. But now that I started collecting and just using the internet as much as I can, I've pulled out fans from all over the world and gotten them to actually work together to try to find a lot of this hard to find material from Malaysia to Korea to just everywhere. And it's really, really cool finding a bunch of people who are really, really into the show, and finding a lot of people who found it the same way, and who are into the same stuff and just love it over years, and it becomes like a huge passion for them, and they really, really enjoy it. I could sit here and show you goodies for years, but I know your time is short, and I can only thank you for making time. But I have to ask, and you tried to go pull out something before. Do you have any goodies from your time with the show, whether that be really anything that you might be able to show us, show some of our collectors over here that might freak out to see?
I don't. All I have is just the hard copy that the studio gave me of the series. So I have my copies, and what else? I think I do have like one little card collecting book. Did they make a card collecting book? It's like Outlaw Star in orange, and then you open it up and it's got the leaves to put your cards in.
I've never seen that before.
I might have it. I might be able to get it. But yeah, I think that's like all the paraphernalia I ever got were just I think I have the DVD collection. I did have VHS. Yeah, didn't they do a DVD collection in metal? I could be wrong.
I'm looking up right now. I own every single DVD. I don't think they did a steel book, but they did do a Blu-ray, and then they did like a few other bigger DVD like collector series things.
Got you. I'm still here. I'm just checking real quick.
No, you're all good.
It would be a deeper dive. I would have to look a little longer to be able to find it.
Hold on.
But yeah, that's the only thing like that came to my mind's eye. I know it's an orange background with the logo, and so I used it for business cards.
Well,
My
most people who work on these shows usually don't get the ability to usually don't get the ability to get merchandise. Maybe somebody will come around the office and sell something, but usually, unless they're in the main production team, they're never getting anything like too crazy, you know?
Yeah, we started asking because this stuff was so expensive to buy at one point when nothing was aired for free. We would seldom get copies of anything. And so we would start requesting and saying, it would really mean a lot to the cast if there are any copies. We would love to have a copy, Sometimes they'd only give them to the lead characters.
Well, America got the shaft when it came to Outlaw Star. Japan got all kinds of fun stuff, from resin toys, resin figures of Aisha and Malfina to the ship, to just all kinds of fun stuff, from keychains to pins. But you've got to keep me posted with this card thing, because in America, they never got a trading card. But in Japan, they had a 5-card trading card set, and then Ultra Jump, the volume that released the manga originally, had phone cards. I could actually show you some of these if you want to see them. But they never had an American release of trading cards. So I'd be really curious how many slots came in there, because I wonder if that was supposed to go with one of these kind of things.
Multiple pages, as I recall. I'm so curious.
Yeah, that's weird, because they even released a book called The Dragon Magazine that showed merchandise from back in the day, but it never showed a binder.
Oh, yeah, it was plastic in the front, and there's no spiral, and it just was kind of a fold-out book. I need to find that.
Well, listen. Well, if you do find it, just for the sake of my own records and being a giant nerd, I would love to see it. But I don't think that's ever been shown, so you might make some fans' days with that. But
you may have hit a good question there.
Well, like I said, if you had more time, I'd hit more. We might have to do a part 2 one of these days. But I did want to, and I might cut this part out, but I did want to see how much stuff you actually got, because, and trust me, this isn't much of a... It's not a hindrance to my pocket at all. I've actually been collecting Outlaw Star for a while, and right here I've got a whole bunch of different cells. A bunch of ones I'd like to show you, but one of them that's really, really cool that I actually picked up recently is an oversized cell from the last episode of Malfina in her extra,
That's background art too, huh?
Yeah, in her extra costume. But you can see that, part of the cell is part of the ship right there. It's moving around, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
But I need to double check this while I'm talking to you, and I should have done this beforehand. As I pull my headphones out.
We can still hear you.
I'm a professional. Okay, hold on.
No.
I have here, if you are interested for your home office, and trust me, this isn't, like I said, it doesn't hurt my pocketbook by any means. I have here a few things that you actually might like. I don't know if they're called dogas or gengas. I cannot remember the name. But when the cells are made, there's an additional drawing that goes with it as well. I have 2 regular drawings without the cell. One of Suzuka right here.
That is so cool.
But then I also have one of, and I can't remember his name, it's not Hazaku, but the guy who makes the copy of her when they fight. I've got a shot of him too with the blade on his hand.
Oh, wow.
So if either one of these are of interest of yours for the office, let me know. But more importantly, I actually did pick this up right when we started talking, and I wanted to at least offer this to you as a gift for at least taking the time out of your day, doing something fun. I actually picked up a Twilight Suzuka cell here with an actual drawing with it too.
Oh my goodness.
So it's a pretty nice shot, and like I said, it's the least that I can do for saying thanks. So, send me info via email or something like that if you want, and your name is definitely on it. I thought it would be, a nice addition to the office. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. It's beautiful. I love it when the colors are so vivid.
Suzuka is a hard one to find. There's a lot of shots that are really iconic, and collectors really like it. But I was able to find about 4 of them that were not bad shots, but just a little bit more affordable and still pretty good. So I thought, hey, might as well offer it. At least I could say thanks.
It takes time to go through cells. It becomes a very long shopping trip.
Oh yeah.
I used to go through all the books at every convention trying to find my characters, and it's just they're very scarce now, and the prices have shot up like crazy.
Ever since COVID hit, it's been even worse. But yeah, over the past couple of years, cells have gone crazy high. There's even some companies that are buying up whole stocks of cells and then selling them off. But some of these shows and some of the shows that you've been a part of, people are addicted to them like they are crack cocaine, man. They love them, and they are so hard to find because people will get full-blown scenes. They'll want to frame them. And I've met some interesting Outlaw Star collectors from all over the globe that their cells are their prized possessions. They just absolutely love it. It's the closest thing they're going to get to owning a piece of the show, and they love it.
That's so awesome. Thank you for all of your support and for caring and putting so much love into this show all these years later. And it just proves that they live on and they do matter.
Absolutely. Well, like I said before, it's a tragedy that some of these people wouldn't know your name because to a lot of people out here, it's a name that they're never going to forget because it's not only a part of their childhood, but a part of their adulthood. And yeah, like I said before, hopefully I didn't do too bad at freaking out, but I am more than ecstatic to have you be here, and I'm really happy that we were able to touch base and talk and, just throw around some questions and stuff. I think that's really great. And again, the topic of my show, or the name of the show, is the Tell Me Something Great podcast, and I did a bunch of research on you before we talked, and I just got to say, your demeanor, outlook on life is a really positive one, and every time I catch something with you on it, I'm always learning something new. So thank you very much for dropping some gems to the listeners here, because I knew that you'd be the right person to have come on.
Oh, wonderful. Anything that we can do to uplift our people, especially in such a difficult time, I'm more than happy to be a part of. And we can do this again.
Awesome.
We'll do it in a while.
Well, cool. Well, now we got some stuff to possibly, look for and stuff to do.
Yes.
I'd love to have you back. It'd be great to chat.
Thank you.
Man.
I'm definitely going to track down my little Outlaw Star card holder. I'll find it.
Seriously, thank you so much again for talking shop.
Thank you for keeping the torch alive, aglow for our show. It's so great.
Well, I'm happy to do so, and thank you very much for being a part of something so great. So,
thank you.
Till the next time.
All the best on your healing journey. Focus on, health. Green healing light to you. Take care of all that stuff. And and I'll look forward to hearing from you when you're ready.
For sure. Okay, well, thank you so much again. Have a great night, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you. Thanks so much. If anybody's helping you, thank you to them too.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
That's great.